Over the years, we have seen countless horror franchises boom into popularity, causing their creators to expand out to other forms of media to tell new and immersive stories. Typically, these films will sprout novelized adaptations, comics, TV shows, and on rarer occasions, video game adaptations. We all know how much of a dumpster fire video game to film adaptations can be, but film to video game adaptations seem to be much more of a mixed bag. Although several horror properties fail to shine when adapting their material for a video game, there are examples of games that translate the material well and deliver a fun video game experience as well. One such franchise that has both struggled and succeeded at adapting its material into a video game format is the Alien franchise. Alien began scaring people back in 1979, and for the past 40 years we have seen well over 20 games released that have adapted the source material in varying quality. For the longest time, the gaming side of the series was one of mediocrity, as although there were glimpses of positivity, a lot of it needed throwing out in the dumpster fire too. Many people had lost hope with the franchise ever recovering after the release of Aliens Colonial Marines, as the sheer nerve of Sega selling a half-finished game with empty promises made it feel like the Alien games were dead and buried. That is, until Creative Assembly pulled off the impossible in 2014, completely shocking the gaming industry by bringing the Alien series back to its roots and creating the most movie-accurate adaptation of the franchise to date, Alien Isolation. The game is a survival horror following the story of Amanda Ripley, the daughter of Ellen Ripley, who before this had only ever been seen in a deleted scene from Aliens, looking older than that thing out of SpongeBob.
You just can't wait for me to die, can you?
Ever since Amanda's mum got locked in a freezer, she has been searching for any leads that could point her in the direction of her presumed dead mother. This cheerful adventure leads her to the Sevastopol, a space station containing information on Ellen's last known location. However, the station has been plunged into chaos after a xenomorph found its way onto the station, causing those who survived its initial attack to go insane and turn against one another. Isolation is a survival horror game, embracing what made the first film so great by having the player feel vulnerable and isolated, hence the name of the game, as well as making the xenomorph actually feel dangerous instead of having it fall apart like paper mache, like we had seen in previous games. It's these fundamental changes that made Alien Isolation such a success in the eyes of many, and made it a breath of fresh air in a pretty stagnant series. Alien games were no longer going to be viewed as buggy shooting simulators, but rather the atmospheric, fear-inducing adventures they were always supposed to be. Well, that's what everyone thought after Isolation came out, but honestly, after its release, nothing really changed. It's been nearly 8 years since the release of Isolation, and the last Alien-related game to come out was last year's Aliens Fireteam, which once again went with the common Alien approach of having you play as a marine, blasting through hordes of Xenos. And whilst this has been fun in the past, many people just want another Isolation type of game, although the game wasn't an instant big seller, which honestly doesn't surprise me. Not because the game looked bad, but because it was produced by Sega, who were putting out some absolute stinkers at the time. It managed to sell 2 million copies around half a year after launch, so clearly this proves that people were interested in this new approach. Most people are in agreement that the game is great, myself included. Isolation gets so many things right, and it's bizarre how a game this good has not had a sequel yet. It would hurt to see this absolute beast of a game get left as a solo cult classic, rather than get its narrative and mechanics expanded upon further in a potential sequel. Only games that are truly special deserve sequels, and this game is special. Isolation has so much to offer survival horror fans, both old and new, and I want to discuss the elements of this game and how they blend together to create one of the most terrifying experiences in video games to date. It would be easy to sit here and say that the story of Isolation is uninspired, and from the outside, that is how it seems. But don't let this fool you. The story of Alien Isolation has layers. It's not the most inspired story ever, but there is enough here that keeps you engaged in Sevastopol and its inhabitants. I was very engaged throughout the whole story. Well, as engaged as I possibly could be, because to be honest, I was really struggling with the cutscenes, as for some reason, the frame rate of the game dropped to about 20 FPS, making these moments feel less like a sci-fi flick and more like a 1910s stop-motion short film. Amanda Ripley was a huge gamble for this game, honestly, as a lot of people could have dismissed her straight away. She ain't my Ripley. But her story in this game is nearly on par with her mother's, in my opinion. It's been 15 long years for Amanda, dealing with the fact that her mum is missing in space, and all she wants is some closure, just anything to put her mind at ease. I'm sure she would have been happy with anything, maybe even just a note. Once Amanda realises closure could be around the corner, she and a small team go aboard the Sevastopol, a huge commercial space station where a voice recording from the Nostromo has been located. From the get-go, Amanda is shown to be a strong leader, just like her mother, when she tries to calm her teammate Taylor down, and when she is able to take control in a dire situation that seems uncontrollable. Once on board the station, Amanda realizes that everything is too quiet for a usually busy and thriving artificial floating colony like this one, but can't figure out why. Unfortunately for us, we already know why. Ripley's hopes of this mission being a simple in and out shatter once she realizes there is something on board the station that is killing most of the inhabitants and sending those who are still alive into a state of panic. Her mission now becomes secondary, as Ripley's new objective is to survive this alien threat, reunite with her friends, and team up with anyone willing to fight back against the Xeno. Like I already said, Alien Isolation shares similar narrative beats with many of the films in the franchise. In fact, the reason the alien, or rather aliens, are on board the Sevastopol in the first place is because a salvaging crew led by Marlowe, a minor antagonist in the game, stumbles upon the same crashed Promethean ship found by the Nostromo, and just like Kane in the original, Marlowe's wife, Foster, is face-hugged and is taken to the Sevastopol to seek medical attention. Of course, at this point in time, there is no known cure for weird alien embryo in my chest-itis yet, so Foster's baby alien bursts from her chest and begins its life on the space station, starting several small businesses. Killing people. Obviously, things are never what they seem in the Alien universe, and it's revealed that the company were aware of the alien's presence on board the station when sending Ripley and her team on board, once again teaching players to never get a job working for a spacefaring megacorporation. Like any rational person, Ripley is freaked out by the prospect of spending a long period of time with a creature that has been described as a killer.
You get it?
Okay.
And being thrown right into the deep end proves too much for her to handle at times. The beginning of the game portrays her as fearful and nervous, as you would expect. I'm not blaming her for shitting her pants in this scenario. The game shows this fear to the player in a number of subtle yet effective ways, one of which is through Amanda's body language. Whilst she is aiming with her revolver, Ripley's hands will begin to shake, like she is struggling to keep her cool in the face of danger. Details like this are so helpful for making you feel weak, which is a great reset for the franchise, as it's been a while since fans have actually been scared of an alien. It also makes Amanda a very relatable and likeable character, as whilst she does eventually become braver once she encounters the alien enough times, that fear never goes away. But seeing Ripley fight her fears makes her such an endearing character in the game. Alien Isolation's story, although not entirely original, makes it feel like you are living in the events of the first film, which was a great feeling to experience, and Ripley for me has definitely gone down as one of the best characters in modern horror games. It's strange that we had to wait as long as we did for a survival horror type of alien game. The series was literally perfect for this kind of adaptation, and Alien Isolation is proof of this. Isolation, without a doubt, is the best alien game to date, thanks to its tense and immersive gameplay. Alien Isolation feels like a classic survival horror game, more than a modern one, whereas classic survival horrors were more about avoiding danger and making the player feel vulnerable. Modern survival horrors give players the tools to empower them and make them feel like they have a chance against the threat. Alien Isolation teaches you over and over again that fighting the alien really isn't going to work. In fact, to be more specific, Isolation feels like a hybrid of survival horror games and stealth games. Although there are layers to the gameplay of Isolation, what it boils down to is hiding from and evading enemies, utilizing both the environment around you as well as craftable items. The layout of the ship is structured in a way that encourages you to hide and find alternate routes to your objective. One of your best friends in this game is definitely access tunnels. These tunnels are small shafts that Ripley can squeeze into that lead from one room to another, and using these is a must if you want to survive. Since Sevastopol, for a lack of a better term, has gone to shit, most of the doors on board have been permanently sealed, barricaded, or are just too dangerous to pass through. So throughout the game, Ripley can find tools that help her unlock new areas of the ship. The main focus of the game is of course to keep moving forward. However, there comes a time when you have to realise that you aren't going to get any further unless you hide. You will often find yourself in close proximity with the alien and other enemies, and so there are plenty of places where you can hide to avoid detection and allow enemies to pass by. But be aware that this is not a permanent solution to your problem, as eventually you will have to leave the comfort of your hiding hole. Oh yeah, Don't forget these places don't make you invincible. Hiding places are not the only interactable pieces of the environment either, as many computer and wall terminals can be used to find codes for doors, disable cameras, and impurify the air in order to keep your visibility low. Crafting items is a big aspect of Isolation's gameplay. As well as being able to craft typical things like healing items, the player can also find blueprints for throwable items that differ in use. Crafting items can be very costly and require a lot of components. Components are scattered throughout the Sevastopol, meaning you will have to search for the components you need. Although these items are not 100% guaranteed to save your life, they will definitely help put some distance between yourself and the alien. Now, glorified keys and throwables are not just the only tools Ripley will need to survive the horrors of the Sevastopol. The revolver, shotgun, stun baton, flamethrower, and bolt gun all have unique uses and work better on different enemies. Yeah, maybe it's time I talked about the other enemies in this game, besides the alien. Due to society on board the station falling apart thanks to one spiky boy, most of the humans have decided to stick in small groups with those closest to them, fearing that outsiders will try and take their supplies. Most members of these groups you encounter are well armed and are not afraid to kill Ripley, provoked or not. The other enemies that cause nearly as many problems for you as the alien are the androids. These androids are unlike any others we have seen in the Alien universe so far, as where most other androids are made to look and act human with realistic facial and body appearances and personalities, these off-brand androids seem to have been modelled after Jeff Bezos. Their simple appearance and robotic monotone voices are downright creepy,
and their desire to kill any humans in their path, including you, is downright terrifying.
Although they can be beaten, they don't go down without a fight. To be fair though, I think the androids in this game are really misunderstood. A lot of the characters seem to be scared of them, and Ripley is often put in a position where she has to kill some of them, but deep down, I think they're really nice. I mean, one of them saw how hungry this man was and decided to feed him a delicious magazine, so they can't be that evil. Now it's time to talk about the Big Daddy himself, the alien. A big reason the game works so well is because it gives all the power back to the alien, an element the franchise had been missing for a very long time. Despite you having all these fancy gadgets and tools, you can't kill an alien. Well, until the plot demands it. Having an enemy constantly breathing down your neck, with the thought in the back of your mind that you can't kill it, creates such a powerful feeling of fear within you. Even in the late game, the alien remains terrifying due to its sheer power over you. No matter how much stronger you get, with bigger guns and more gadgets, they merely just annoy the creature. Whilst you think you have bought yourself some time, the alien is just plotting new ways of trying to get you. More often than not, the alien will make itself known to the player, with loud screeches and hisses echoing throughout the halls. These small audio cues tell the player that they have to be on the lookout and keep a low profile from the alien. Your motion tracker is always glued to your hand at moments like this, as you don't want to run the risk of losing the alien. But after a while, you begin to understand the patterns of the alien. You think each encounter follows a certain routine. If I don't make noise, then it won't get me. But then the game throws a massive wrench into the works. The alien can ambush you from vents in the ceiling.
Those vents are also pretty dark, so who knows what else is up there.
If I could describe the gameplay of Isolation in one word, it would be Now, slow often has negative connotations, especially in video games. Me calling it slow does sound like I am contradicting myself from earlier. How can the gameplay be enjoyable and slow at the same time? Whilst yes, slow gameplay often makes a game drag and feel dissatisfying, the way it is used here makes perfect sense for the style of the game. Isolation's gameplay is so enjoyable because of how tense and quiet everything is all the time. Whereas the devs could have made it so the alien constantly chases you, that wouldn't have nearly been as scary or as fun to experience. The fun comes from being in control of the situation you are in, and the anxiety comes from the fear of doing something too quickly. This is why the gameplay is so good in this game. You never feel like there is a moment where you switch off for a long period of time. You are always in the action and having to really think about what to do next. Every noise and movement you make could very well be your last if you are not careful, and to me, this was an enjoyable and exciting change from the bog standard, oh look, there's an alien, let's shoot it with a million bullets approach. Very few games adapted from films have managed to actually make you feel like you are inside the film itself, or at least in the same universe. Although these adaptations try to copy the same style and tone of the movies they were based off, a lot of them fail to get you fully immersed in your surroundings. Alien Isolation is not one of these games. It successfully manages to embrace the aesthetic and tone of the Alien movies that came before it, making it feel like you've been sucked through your TV. Now, I'm a sucker for scary games set in desolate places. I think many scares come from the thought of being in the middle of nowhere, floating through space, or being trapped in the middle of the ocean. Isolation is a very claustrophobic game. The layout of the ship mostly consists of corridors with small hatches branching off throughout its interior. Most places that were once populated with life have now been abandoned, and as a result have become these creepy relics of a time that has passed on board the Sevastopol. Everywhere you go there is clutter and debris, as well as makeshift barricades blocking many entrances. Details like this are so effective at making the player feel like they are in a hopeless situation, and it really keeps the alien on a pedestal for a lot of the game, giving it this unignorable presence whenever you come across it. Another one of my favourite aspects of a horror game is when the devs take the time to show the sanity of survivors gradually decreasing, and Isolation does this with graffiti and messages left by people on the walls of the station. Messages of hopelessness and regret really cement the idea that most of the people on board Sevastopol have lost hope of ever leaving again, giving the alien such an intimidating stature even when it's not on screen. It's not just what you can see that's scary either, but also what you can't. Most of the game is dimly lit, with the occasional area being fully visible thanks to built-in lights on the walls and floor. However, not everywhere is a glowing safe haven like these, and often you will have to rely on your own supplies like flares and batteries to see where you are going. Best not to rely too much on your torch, however. Apparently the only batteries they had on board the station were those crappy zinc ones that die after 2 minutes of use. Lighting was such a huge part of making the original Alien films so scary, and making that a focus visually in this game was such a nice touch. Even when you have your motion tracker in hand, you still have it in the back of your mind that something is just waiting for you in the darkness. Noise is also a great way of freaking out the player, and the sound design of Isolation is executed excellently. Everything on board the ship sounds incredibly violent and menacing. Machinery crashing together far away can be heard echoing throughout the station, letting you know just how massive Sevastopol really is, and that the alien could literally be anywhere. Sound design like this is key in making a game like Alien Isolation as scary as possible. It disorientates you and conditions you to fear every new or unique noise you hear. That could just be a burst pipe, or it could definitely be a hungry alien coming to say hello. And the best part is you don't really know for sure until it's too late. Video game design isn't my forte, honestly. Wouldn't be here making videos if that was the case. That doesn't mean I haven't thought up some ideas a potential Alien Isolation sequel could bring to the table. Everyone's opinion on what an Isolation sequel should consist of is going to be different, obviously. These are just some ideas I would love to see come to life in a potential sequel. In terms of the game's setting, I would love the game to be set inside a Weyland-Yutani testing facility and have us take control of a test subject. The switch in perspective would be a nice touch, as whilst I did enjoy Amanda in the first game, her fate was already predetermined from aliens, so all the tension of potentially witnessing her death was never present. A new main character is necessary, I feel, because Amanda by the end of Isolation had grown to be much braver in the face of danger, and so she just wouldn't work as well in a horror-based game, which is exactly why Ripley in the movies changed as the movies went on. By Aliens, she was no longer afraid to get stuck in and kill any Xenos that got in her way, so having a brand new character interacting with aliens for the first time would help reset the player back into the mindset of fearing these creatures once again. An underground facility would also be a perfect place to see a potential sequel, as it gives the devs creative freedom to make an even more claustrophobic and terrifying place for the player to explore. As well as staying true to the first Isolation gameplay with hiding and sneaking, the testing facility also gives the developers the opportunity to add some more creative elements that could make the game a lot more stressful than the first. I think puzzle puzzles would be a good way to make the gameplay that little extra challenging, and would make the game feel even more like a classic survival horror game than the first one. Crafting should also definitely make a return in the sequel. However, it would be interesting to see what sort of changes they could make to the formula. Maybe they could implement a power node sort of mechanic like in Dead Space, where you can manually choose what sort of upgrade your weapons have. One thing I wanted to see more of in the original was being able to fully explore the interior of the Sevastopol. Often the game funnels you down a set path due to missions taking place in set parts of the station, so with a potential sequel, it would be amazing to have maybe a semi-open world kind of approach to it, being able to fully explore the playable area. Whilst it's all well and good me listing off these things I want to see in Alien Isolation 2, we still don't know if this game will ever exist, with survival horror once again becoming popular in recent years thanks to the success of Resident Evil, as well as a return of the survival horror giant Dead Space.
Then maybe, just maybe, there's a chance of us getting that long-awaited sequel we all deserve.